Why do you want your brother to die?
Because I was hurt so bad, and I don't want to be around people.
Why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
The teenage years can be tumultuous, and for some young individuals, they are marked by extremely disturbing behavior.
I'm perfectly normal girl.
Perfectly normal?
Yeah.
Who are your friends?
I don't really have any friends. All I have is my boyfriend.
From serial killers to cult followers, these teens have been seen sharing their stories in interviews.
I just love them. I feel for them. I feel their pain. I feel their sorrows and their loss.
This makes us wonder, what could be the reason they engage in such evil acts? Join us in today's video as we take a deep dive into some of the most disturbing interviews with evil teens. Number 10. Gregory Ramos. A shocking event took place on November 2018 involving high school student Gregory Ramos and his mother, Gail Clevenger. The altercation arose from Gregory's academic struggles, particularly his disappointing D grade in one of his classes. This led to a heated argument between mother and son, resulting in Gail physically punishing Gregory. However, Gregory reached a breaking point and made a decision that would change everything. In a horrifying act, he decided to give his mother a punishment of his own: death. Gregory proceeded to attack Gail, strangling her with his bare hands for 30 minutes until she succumbed to death. With Gail's lifeless body in his possession, Gregory then placed it in the trunk of a van and buried it under a fire pit at River City Church in Florida. To add an additional layer of deception, he enlisted the help of his classmates, Dylan Siegler and Brian Porras, to stage a burglary. Gregory's plan was to make it seem like intruders were responsible for his mother's death. As anticipated, Gregory called 911 and reported the fake burglary, expecting the police to arrive and buy into his fabricated story. Unfortunately for Gregory, things did not go according to plan. As the law enforcement officers began their investigation, they discovered inconsistencies between Gregory's account and those of his friends. Suspicion started to weigh heavily on Gregory, as the authorities had their own reasons to believe he was withholding crucial information. During hours of intense interrogation, Gregory initially denied any involvement in his mother's death. However, when presented with the mounting evidence against him and the contradictions in his story, Gregory reached another breaking point. In a bone-chilling confession, he revealed the shocking details of his crime. With an unsettling lack of remorse, Gregory calmly admitted, "I started beating her. I didn't like it, so I strangled her to death. I put her in a wheelbarrow. I put her in my car. I took her with the car." This revelation was deeply disturbing, but what made it even more chilling was the fact that his friends, Dylan and Brian, had unknowingly become accomplices in a twisted murder case. They didn't know how bad things were until they were accused of breaking the law, too. In December 2020, Gregory Ramos pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, abuse of a body, and tampering with evidence. Although he believed his actions were justified, he was sentenced to 60 years in prison. Specifically, he received 45 years for the murder and 15 years for the abuse of a body. As a juvenile at the time of the crime, Gregory escaped the possibility of life imprisonment. However, he was placed on lifetime probation, which could be terminated after 10 years of his release. While Gregory faced the full weight of the law, his friends Dylan and Brian were ultimately pardoned, and the charges against them were dropped. The shocking and tragic tale of Gregory Ramos serves as a grim reminder of the consequences that can arise from a moment of anger and the dangerous path that can unfold from there. Number 9. Beth Thomas. Known as the infamous Child of Rage, Beth Thomas gained notoriety in 1990 when she admitted to a clinical psychologist that she would have killed her adoptive parents and brother if given the opportunity. Her behavior was so abnormal that her adoptive parents, Tim and Julie Tennant, had to lock her in a room at night for their own safety. At first glance, it seemed like Beth was just a violent and disturbed child. But as her story unfolded, it became clear that she had experienced severe trauma at a young age. Beth and her younger brother, Jonathan, were born to a mother who passed away when they were both just babies. Their father, unable to cope with the responsibility, subjected both children to neglect and abuse. Beth, in particular, was horrifically sexually abused by her biological father. After a few months, social services intervened and placed both siblings in the care of the Tennant family, who had been trying to have children for 10 years. Initially, things seemed to be going well, but soon enough, Beth began exhibiting psychopathic behavior. She would hurt animals and physically abuse her brother, even going so far as to attempt to kill him on multiple occasions. But the worst part was her openness about her desire to kill her adoptive parents. In an interview with Dr. Ken Magid, Beth calmly discussed her plans to murder her family. It was this interview that brought her story to national attention. Eventually, Beth was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, a severe trauma response that occurs in children who didn't form an emotional bond with their caregivers. With professional help, she was able to overcome her trauma and emerge as a success story, at least on the surface. After spending some time under the care of therapist Connell Watkins, Beth was adopted by Nancy Thomas and continued to make progress. She even went on to pursue a nursing degree from the University of Colorado. However, the truth about her happy ending is more complicated than it seems. Both Watkins and Thomas were implicated in shady practices that raise questions about Beth's continued well-being. Watkins was sentenced to 16 years in prison for killing another victim under her care, while Thomas employed abusive parenting methods centered on isolation, deprivation, and humiliation. All of this raises the question, is Beth's current mental stability genuine? Or is it just a facade concealing the darkness she's harboring inside? Either way, her story is a stark reminder of the depths of trauma and the power of therapy, as well as the dangers of misplaced trust in those who claim to help. Number 8. Brian Lee Draper and Tori Michael Adamczyk. The chilling story of Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk revolves around the horrific murder of their fellow classmate, Cassie Jo Stoddard. The events unfolded on the fateful night of September 22, 2006, when Stoddard was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle, Allison and Frank Contreras. The Contreras family had entrusted Stoddard with the responsibility of looking after their pets while they were away. Little did they know, this would lead to a tragedy beyond imagination. That night, Stoddard invited her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, to stay with her. Unknown to them, Draper and Adamczyk, classmates of Stoddard, had an ulterior motive for visiting. After a quick tour of the house, the four settled down to watch a movie. However, Draper and Adamczyk left under the guise of a friendly gesture, only to carry out a gruesome plan they had been plotting for over a week: the murder of Stoddard. What makes this case even more horrifying is the fact that Draper and Adamczyk documented their sinister intentions in chilling detail. They recorded a disturbing statement prior to the murder, saying, "We found our victim, and, maybe she's our friend, but you know what? We all have to make sacrifices, so we're going to kill her and her friends." This revelation sends shivers down the spine, highlighting the premeditated nature of their heinous act. Before leaving the house, Draper deliberately unlocked the basement door, ensuring they could re-enter undetected. Upon their return, they resorted to creating loud noises, attempting to lure Beckham and Stoddard downstairs. When their initial plan failed, they resorted to cutting off the power, hoping this would prompt the unsuspecting victims to investigate. Stoddard, frightened and alone, reached out to Beckham's mother, seeking protection. Tragically, her plea fell on deaf ears, and Beckham's mother arrived to collect him, leaving Stoddard vulnerable. Unbeknownst to her, Draper and Adamczyk were lurking in the shadows, repeatedly banging on objects in the basement, hoping to pique her curiosity. When this failed to yield results, they ascended the stairs, wielding knives purchased from a pawn shop, and launched a brutal attack. Stoddard endured around 30 stab wounds and ultimately lost her life. The video they had previously recorded at school served as crucial evidence in linking the boys to the murder. Despite initially trying to deny their involvement during a lengthy interrogation, they eventually confessed to the crime. On September 27, 2006, Draper and Adamczyk were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. They faced separate trials, each placing blame on the other. Ultimately, they received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, as well as an additional 30-year term for the conviction of conspiracy to commit murder. Number 7. Isabella Guzman. In the perplexing case of Isabella Guzman, a web of deception and manipulation unfolds. Isabella, initially claiming to be someone else, attempted to mislead detectives during her interrogation. But the truth behind her twisted act became evident as her horrific crime unraveled. Isabella was born in 1995 and grew up in Colorado with her parents. From an early age, she had a tumultuous relationship with her mother, exacerbated by financial instability and her parents' divorce. Isabella's mother quickly remarried, further exacerbating their strained bond. Unfortunately, this strained relationship would lead to her mother's tragic demise. On August 27, 2013, just hours before the murder, Isabella sent her mother a chilling email that read, "You will pay." This was one in a series of threatening emails she had been sending. Alarmed by the message, her mother reported the situation to the police. Little did they know, they would return to the residence less than 24 hours later, only to discover a gruesome murder scene. On the evening of August 28, Miss Guzman arrived home from work and promptly took a shower. Within minutes, her husband, Isabella's stepfather, heard her screams for help emanating from the bathroom. Desperate to assist, he rushed to her aid, but Isabella, barricading the door, prevented him from entering. He hurried downstairs to call the police, and upon his return, he witnessed Isabella standing in the bathroom doorway, wielding a knife, with his wife lying motionless and covered in blood. Isabella callously walked past her stepfather, leaving him in shock and unable to intervene or utter a word. Upon arrival, the officers discovered Miss Guzman's lifeless body lying naked on the bathroom floor next to a baseball bat. The autopsy revealed the horrifying extent of the violence she had endured: 31 stab wounds to the face and 48 to the neck. Isabella, after a 16-hour manhunt, was apprehended and soon found herself in a grueling interrogation. During the interrogation, Isabella initially denied being herself, even assuming the identity of another person. However, through persistence, the detectives managed to extract a confession from her. Astonishingly, Isabella's fate took a surprising turn. She was charged with first-degree murder but shockingly found not guilty. The judge accepted her plea of insanity, as she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. This controversial decision left many questioning the true nature of the crime. Despite the shocking history of threatening her mother, the judge believed that Isabella's mental illness played a significant role. As a result, she has been confined to a mental facility since 2013, with fears that she may be released back into society in 2024. Number 6. Zachary Davis. On August 2012, Zachary Davis committed an unimaginable act of violence that shocked the community. He was involved in killing his mother. His life took a tumultuous turn in 2007 following the death of his father, Chris Davis, from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Struggling with the grief and the weight of losing his dad, Zachary's mental health deteriorated. Unfortunately, his mother's decision to withdraw him from therapy and relocate the family to a new town only exacerbated his troubled state of mind. Zachary's inclination towards darkness manifested in different ways. He would speak in a monotonous whisper and wear the same hoodie daily. Later on, he delved into the realm of serial killers and torture devices. His twisted thoughts found an outlet in his disturbingly vivid notebooks, filled with shocking anecdotes that could send shivers down anyone's spine. The dreadful night that forever scarred the Davis family began like any other, as they spent quality time together watching a movie. Little did they know that this innocent evening would quickly turn into a nightmare. Upon returning home, Zachary assembled a sinister collection of items in his backpack: clothing, notebooks, a toothbrush, gloves, a ski mask, and a claw hammer. Unknown to his family, this was not a simple escape plan. It was a premeditated act of unspeakable horror. Later on, Zachary entered his mother's room while she slept peacefully. With chilling brutality, he hit her to death, relentlessly striking her nearly 20 times and leaving a horrifying scene of blood and violence. Fueling his disturbed intentions further, Zachary drenched his clothes in whiskey and gasoline before setting the family game room ablaze. Meanwhile, Zachary's older brother, Josh, was awakened by the fire alarm and rushed to save their mother. While opening her bedroom door, he was confronted with a gruesome sight that he could not bear. In shock and fear, Josh managed to flee to a neighbor's house, while Zachary made his escape, leaving a trail of devastation behind him. Authorities apprehended him almost 10 miles away, and soon after he was arrested and convicted for the heinous murder. During the trial, Zachary granted several interviews, providing glimpses into the disturbing depths of his mind. In a chilling conversation with renowned psychologist Dr. Phil, viewers were exposed to Zachary's eerie voice as he confessed that the voice of his deceased father had instructed him to commit matricide. Adding to the horrors, Zachary shockingly laughed while describing the sound of the sledgehammer striking his mother's head. The baffling nature of his behavior leaves us wondering what could possibly be wrong with Zachary while he was committing such an evil act. Now it's time for our subscribers' pick. If you think you have come across the most disturbing interviews with evil teens, take a look at this teenage girl who seemed to have poisoned 19 of her fellow classmates. The motive behind her actions remains a mystery, leaving the investigators baffled. The incident would spark widespread concern and raise questions about mental health awareness and the pressures teenagers face in today's society. So guys, what do you think would have initiated the desire for her to carry out such evil acts? Do share your thoughts in the comments section below as we continue with this video. Number 5. Daniel William Marsh. When Daniel William Marsh was 10 years old, he became famous for saving his dad's life during a heart attack. He also got an award from the American Red Cross for being a hero in 2009. However, the happiness of that heroic act soon faded as his parents went through a bitter divorce, triggered by his mother's affair with his former kindergarten teacher. It was during this time that Marsh's thoughts turned obsessively towards violence. To make it worse, he even expressed his desire to slit his mother's throat repeatedly. Marsh's mental state deteriorated rapidly, leading him to develop alcohol and drug addictions as a coping mechanism. In his unsettling interviews, he admitted that he constantly thought of ways to kill people, even instantly envisioning their deaths upon seeing them. As his dark obsessions consumed him, the tragic events that would forever stain Davis, California, were set in motion. On April 14, 2013, Marsh decided to turn his violent fantasies into reality. Armed with a 6-inch buck knife, he prepared meticulously, taping his shoes to avoid leaving footprints and wearing gloves to prevent DNA identification. After scouring the streets for vulnerable homes with open windows or doors, he found his victims, Oliver Chip Northup Jr. and Claudia Mopine, sleeping in their condo. The subsequent brutal attack saw Marsh savagely stab them a shocking 128 times before mutilating their bodies in unimaginable ways. Despite Marsh's careful planning, leaving behind no trace of physical evidence, his morbid boasts to close friends led to his arrest. The investigation proved daunting and required the efforts of multiple investigators and over 25 Federal Bureau of Investigation agents. During a 4-hour interrogation on June 17, 2013, Marsh attempted to manipulate detectives into doubting his involvement. However, the relentless questioning eventually broke him, and he confessed to the chilling murders. Meanwhile, Marsh's distorted mind, haunted by his mother's infidelity, revealed the disturbing truth behind his descent into darkness. Despite being a teenager at the time of the crimes, Marsh was tried as an adult, found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder with special enhancements, including exceptional depravity, premeditation, and torture. He received a 52-year prison sentence. However, California law prevented the imposition of the death penalty or life imprisonment, leaving the victims' families devastated as Marsh became eligible for parole after serving a mere 25 years. Number 4. Daniel Petrick. Daniel Petrick was involved in remorselessly killing his mother and even attempted to also take his father's life. Born on August 24, 1991, Daniel Petrick seemed like a typical teenager living a normal life with his parents, Mark and Susan Petrick, in Wellington, Ohio. Mark was a Pentecostal minister, while Susan dedicated her time to being a stay-at-home mom. However, the tranquility of their family life was shattered following Daniel's life-altering skiing injury that would set off a chain of events leading to unspeakable horror. As Daniel recovered from his injury, he found solace in the world of video games, particularly the violent game Halo. His obsession with the game grew to alarming levels, with him spending up to 9 hours a day immersed in its virtual violence. When his father decided to intervene by limiting his access to the game, little did he know that his actions would ignite a tragedy beyond comprehension. On October 20, 2007, the peace at the Petrick family's home was broken when Daniel, driven by a dark desire, carefully carried out a plan to kill his parents. Relying on stolen keys to unlock a safe containing a 9mm handgun, he callously shot his mom in the back of her head as they both sat on the couch without suspicion. The scene of horror was further compounded by his attempt to place the gun in his father's hands to make it look like a murder-suicide scenario. Daniel's attempt to deceive was thwarted when his sister and her husband arrived at the house earlier than expected. Despite his failed attempts to cover his tracks and brazenly deny his involvement, the truth of his monstrous act was revealed. As the justice system grappled with the heinous nature of Daniel's crime, a surprising twist emerged during the courtroom proceedings. Mark Petrick, the very man Daniel had tried to kill, displayed a remarkable act of forgiveness and compassion, pleading for leniency on behalf of his son. This unexpected plea for mercy added a poignant layer to a case already fraught with tragedy and betrayal. Throughout numerous interviews and court proceedings, Daniel displayed a chilling lack of remorse for his actions, showcasing a disturbing awareness of the consequences of his deeds. Despite the severity of his crime, the judge ultimately imposed a 23-year prison sentence, the minimum allowed by law, with the possibility of parole in 2030. Number 3. Cassandra Bjorg. In April 2017, a shocking and tragic event unfolded in Lawrenceville, Georgia, involving 2 teenagers, Cassandra Bjorg and her ex-boyfriend, Johnny Ryder. The pair committed a horrifying act, stabbing and killing Cassandra's own grandparents, Randall and Wendy Bjorg, in a fit of madness and brutality. Their method was gruesome, slitting the throats of the unsuspecting grandparents before hiding their bodies upstairs in the house. What followed was a week of disturbing activities, as Cassandra and Johnny used their home as a base of operations. They callously indulged in smoking marijuana, ordering pizza, all the while deliberately locking the room where the lifeless bodies were concealed, in a futile attempt to mask the putrid odor that permeated the house. Johnny Ryder had already been on the wrong side of the law, accused of assaulting his sister with a baseball bat and pepper, spraying her at a different location on the same night as the murders. This troubled past, coupled with Cassandra's twisted intentions, adds another layer of darkness to an already chilling tale. Cassandra didn't plan on stopping after killing her grandparents. Her sinister plan included the murder of Johnny's own parents and anyone who dared to intervene in their insidious romantic affair. The wickedness of their actions was exposed when concerned neighbors noticed the absence of any activity in the Bjorg house for an entire week. Prompted by their growing unease, they alerted law enforcement, which led to the shocking discovery of the murders. The subsequent police interrogation unearthed a disturbing aspect of Cassandra's personality. She spoke about the murders with the detached nonchalance one would normally reserve for recounting a pleasant vacation, showing no traces of remorse or guilt. Johnny Ryder, however, experienced a moment of awakening amidst the fog of infatuation. He finally realized the gravity of his actions and the irreversible consequences that followed. Both Cassandra and Johnny were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and theft. Due to his age, Johnny was potentially faced with the death penalty. However, a guilty plea spared him from this fate, and he received a sentence similar to Cassandra's: life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 60 years, alongside an additional 21 years to be served concurrently. In a compassionate gesture, the family members of the victims expressed their gratitude when both Cassandra and Johnny pleaded guilty, thus avoiding a lengthy and emotionally draining trial. Johnny seized the opportunity to apologize to the Bjorg family, acknowledging the abominable and evil nature of his actions. He begged for forgiveness, his words dripping with remorse and acknowledging the deserving punishment that awaits him. Cassandra, on the other hand, broke down in tears when her sentence was read out. However, she chose to remain silent, declining the opportunity to address the court or offer any words of remorse or regret for her heinous crimes. The pain and grief caused by her actions left a permanent scar on the Bjorg family, reminding us of the depths that evil can reach in the human heart. Number 2. Amber Wright. The story about Amber Wright is that of love, jealousy, and betrayal that revolves between her and her partner, Seth Jackson. The events that followed not only shattered lives, but also showcased the depths of darkness that can reside within the human soul. Seth Jackson, a teenager with dreams of becoming an ultimate fighting championship fighter, was living a seemingly ordinary life until he found himself tangled in a web of deceit. His relationship with Amber Wright took a devastating turn when he suspected her of cheating on him with another man, 18-year-old Michael Bargo. Overwhelmed with suspicion and hurt, Seth ended their relationship, setting the stage for a tumultuous chain of events. As social media became a battleground for their emotions, the flames of resentment grew stronger. Michael Bargo, fueled by his hatred for Seth, threatened him with chilling words, ominously claiming to have a bullet with his name on it. This simmering animosity became the catalyst for a plot that would end in Seth's brutal murder. Michael Bargo enlisted the help of 4 other conspirators: Kyle Hooper, Justin Soto, Charlie Eli, and surprisingly, Seth's former girlfriend, Amber Wright. Betrayal took a wicked turn as Amber, despite her history with Seth, willingly participated in the plan orchestrated by Bargo. Wright played a crucial role, engaging in text messages with Seth to lure him to Charlie Eli's residence. At first, Seth was unsure, but he started to trust Wright because she kept sending convincing messages. Unknown to him, he was walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. When Seth went into Charlie Eli's house, Kyle Hooper struck him from behind with a wooden object. Suddenly, Bargo emerged, armed with a .22 caliber weapon, and ruthlessly shot Seth, ending his life in a cruel and heartless manner. But the torment did not end there. The group subjected Seth to unspeakable acts of violence, inflicting brutal assaults on various parts of his body. Bargo, taking pleasure in Seth's suffering, ultimately delivered the final fatal blow. In their twisted minds, every moment of Seth's last breaths needed to be filled with pain and regret. In their attempt to erase strong evidence, James Havens, an ex-boyfriend of Amber's mother, played a significant role. He helped in the disposal of any DNA or evidence linking Seth to the crime the following day. The facade began to crumble when Kyle Hooper, burdened by guilt, confessed to his mother. This revelation led to the arrest of all 4 teenagers involved. During their trials on June 2012, they were charged as adults. Each received a life sentence, except for James Havens, who pleaded guilty as an accessory, and Michael Bargo, who was sentenced to death. Number 1. Susan Atkins. Susan Atkins was one of the infamous members of Charles Manson's cult and a teenage serial killer whose involvement in the murder of American actress and model Sharon Tate sent shockwaves through Hollywood in August 1969. Born on May 7, 1948, in San Gabriel, California, Susan's life was marked by tragedy and a tumultuous upbringing. Her parents were both alcoholics, and after her mother's death, her family fell apart. Eventually, she moved to San Francisco and found work as a stripper at a nightclub, setting the stage for a fateful encounter that would change her life forever. Charles Manson was a charismatic figure who crossed paths with Susan. Her manipulative teachings convinced Susan to join his family, and she became one of the youngest individuals to be swayed by his warped ideologies. Believing Manson to be a messiah-like figure, Susan became part of his twisted web. August 8, 1969 would forever be etched in history as the night Manson's dark plans unfolded. Manson instructed Susan, along with Linda Kasabian and Patricia Krenwinkel, to follow the commands of his friend Charles Tex Watson. Unknown to Susan, they were headed to a home to commit robbery and murder, but she had no idea whose home it was. Upon arrival, they took the occupants of the house hostage, mercilessly killing those who dared to interfere. Tragically, one of the victims was Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant at the time. Despite Sharon's pleas for the sake of her unborn child, Susan and Watson showed no mercy. Susan confessed that while she couldn't bring herself to personally stab Sharon, official reports indicate that both she and Watson stabbed Tate at least 16 times. The horror reached unimaginable depths when Sharon was hanged in her own home, while Susan used her blood to write the word pig on the front door. Susan's involvement in the murders came to light in October 1969 when she confessed to a friend, who promptly reported her to the police. She was convicted and initially sentenced to death, but her sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. During her time in prison, Susan granted an interview, revealing the twisted mindset that had bound her to the Manson family. She expressed a sense of being trapped, unable to escape the grip of the darkness she had become entangled in. Despite her numerous appeals for release, Susan was continually denied freedom. As she battled terminal brain cancer and underwent a left leg amputation, she endured additional health complications. Eventually, on September 24, 2009, Susan Atkins passed away at the age of 61, succumbing to natural causes. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.